"Deadweight," he said into the microphone in front of 70 employees and a tray of cold mini quiches and stale danishes. He said it like a joke, but his eyes didn't smile. Mine didn't blink. I was still holding the printout my supply chain forecast I'd worked on until 1:30 a.m. Color-coded delays, urgent shipment failures, and the real-time exposure of our only logistics vendor. I opened my mouth to clarify. He raised his hand. "Can't have deadweight slowing us down, right, team?" Louder this time. Laughter followed. Uneven force, the kind that tastes like day-old coffee and fear. He grinned. "We need racers, not anchors." He kept talking, but I stopped listening. I stared at the corner staple on my chart, wondering how many 70-hour weeks it took to become disposable. That moment, that exact breath, I knew I was done. 6 years in that echoing office space. And not once did they see me. They saw data, charts, results. They noticed I didn't flirt over drinks or fake interest in company game nights and themed Slack emojis. What they didn't notice, what he never once asked, was that I was the reason our factory didn't collapse back in Q4 of 23. But now I was an anchor. So I stood up. No meltdown, no speech, just my chipped mug, the one that said, "Nevertheless." She negotiated in fading print my notepad and my badge. I left the report on the table, stapled, marked, ignored, and I didn't look back. You only look back if something's unresolved. I was finished. Oh, and if you've made it this far, maybe hit subscribe. 96% of you listen without subscribing, and honestly, it keeps the caffeine flowing. These stories aren't made with magic. They're made with dark roast and deadlines. Support matters. Anyway, I walked past the interns, avoiding eye contact, past HR pretending to read emails, past the director of finance who once called me frighteningly precise in negotiations. I didn't feel precise. I felt scraped out, like someone had peeled my name off my office door and dumped it in a forgotten desk drawer along with outdated welcome packets. By the time I hit the parking garage, my fingers trembled. Not with rage, not yet with purpose. More like that cold flash when you see behind a magician's trick. Because here's what none of them knew. Not HR, not finance, not even Troy, with his podcast voice and discount leadership wisdom. 2 years ago, when our supplier was sinking, I didn't just fix it. I bought in. Quietly, legally, permanently. The ink on the controlling interest transfer had dried days before the holiday mixer I was never invited to. But walking out that afternoon wasn't revenge. It wasn't even a move. It was gravity, letting things fall where they were already going. By 7:42 p.m. The office was dark except for that ridiculous glowing fish tank in reception. The one brand strategy swore added warmth to the client journey, though it always smelled like shrimp decay and chlorine. I was alone. Unless you counted Marcus the janitor, humming Garth Brooks 2 floors down, or Evan from IT passed out at his desk, Cheez-Its scattered across his shirt like confetti, I packed slow. Not for nostalgia, just certainty. I knew I'd never re-enter that building, not through the front doors, not even as a consultant. I moved like I was closing a crime scene. I took what mattered. 3 black notebooks, handwritten, unscanned. My mug still half full. And the one photo no one ever saw taped behind my monitor. Me and Clara Winslow, CEO of our only supplier, both in steel-toe boots and dusty hard hats, laughing on the day we signed our first direct contract. No one had ever asked who she was. No one had ever noticed. I cleared my personal folder with surgical precision. Nothing sloppy. No Slack threads. No email banter. No budget birthday cards. Just air. Just silence. I wiped the keyboard with a disinfectant wipe. Not for them. For me. A ritual. And maybe because you should always leave something cleaner than you found it. I did one last thing. Maybe the only sentimental one. I left a yellow sticky note tucked into the soil of my desk plant. Take care of this. No name. If they couldn't tell it was from me, they didn't deserve the plant. The memory hit, right as I powered down the screen. 2 years ago. Me knees jammed into the seat back on a $139 flight to Indianapolis because procurement refused to cover business class. Scribbling clause language on a napkin in turbulence. Clara picked me up herself, her face unreadable. Back then, her company was circling the drain. She said something that never left me. If you walk, we're dead. If you stay, I'll make sure you never regret it. Some heard panic. I heard partnership. Over schnitzel and cheap beer at a Bavarian-themed pub that smelled like grease. And last chances. That night, I drafted a clause on hotel stationery. If either company undergoes significant leadership changes, the other has review rights on control. A year later, during her board restructuring, Clara offered me equity instead of a cash bonus. I accepted quietly. Another year passed, and then Clara called me at 6:13 a.m. on a Tuesday. "You ready?" she asked. For what I said, groggy. She just laughed. Majority. I didn't tell anyone. Not because I was hiding anything, because I didn't have to. That night, back in my townhome just outside Evanston, I poured a glass of boxed red, kicked off my boots, and opened the bottom drawer of my old metal filing cabinet. There it was, an envelope with my name typed in all caps, Monroe Tessa. Inside, a notarized shareholder agreement. Legal. Locked. Irrevocable. Underneath it, a yellow post-it in Clara's loose handwriting. You were never Deadweight. You were the engine. I sat on the floor spine against cold metal, sipping that wine like it was sacrament. Let them think I walked away. Let them believe I ghosted the job. Sometimes silence isn't retreat, it's the sound of the trap setting. The next morning, HR sent out one of those glossy corporate euthanasia emails. Subject line: exciting transition in procurement strategy. Body. As part of our ongoing efforts to streamline innovation, we're transitioning key procurement workflows to an automated platform powered by AI-driven analytics. We thank Tessa Monroe for her service and wish her well on her next adventure. Next adventure. Like I'd won a cruise. Like they hadn't sliced me open in front of a whiteboard full of flowcharts and finger-pointing. The new CEO, Brendan Knox, with his perfect teeth and overpriced shoes, strutted through the building that week like he'd invented efficiency, even made a crack at Thursday's all hands. Turns out Deadweight floats away on its own. This time, the laughter was cleaner. Practiced. Like they'd all agreed it was easier to pretend nothing happened than admit they hadn't looked deeper. But by Monday, the cracks whispered. A parts shipment didn't show one of the specialized titanium couplings used in our cryogenic transit systems. Tiny piece. Maybe 2 inches long, but without it, production stopped cold. Tracking showed it left the vendor's warehouse, but never updated past the Illinois state line. Near the vending machine, someone muttered, "Didn't Tessa usually handle the expedited runs?" "I thought that was automated now," came the reply. Inside the ops Slack channel, the timestamps told a different story. 4 hours. Nothing. Then a ping from Ricky Tran, a junior analyst with a nervous smile and a TikTok habit. "Hey, anyone know who's covering? Supplier name redacted. Just got a delay notice. Looks like we're off cycle for the next shipment." 60 seconds later, the CFO dropped into the thread, assigning to Cassie Wexler, interim procurement lead. And just like that, the guessing began. Let's not panic over one delay. So they didn't. They panicked over 4. Enter Harlan. Harlan Riggs had just transferred from regional sales 6 weeks earlier. The kind of guy who wore suspenders like a statement and claimed his color-coded Excel macros made him a killer in logistics. They gave him the supplier contact sheet and said, "Handle it." Harlan called, got patched through. 30 seconds in his face turned beet red. He fumbled the mute button, then muttered, "They said they can't talk to me without executive clearance. I'm the executive contact," he insisted, voice strained. Silence. They said he looked down at the desk. They have their own definition of executive now. That afternoon, production flagged another stoppage. Replacement components had been listed as on hold, pending high-level authorization. Harlan called again. This time, the response came through legal. All communication must go through formal counsel. Not a slowdown, a full stop. Inside the break room, the engineer started whispering. Did Tessa ever mention a backup vendor? Nope. She was kind of the vendor, wasn't she? In marketing, someone joked under their breath, "Did we just fire the one person holding the scaffolding?" Still, leadership smiled through it all. They doubled down on the AI-driven future of sourcing narrative. Tossed out words like resilience pipeline and optimization curve. But panic was bleeding through their dress shirts. It showed up in little things. Tight shoulders in meetings, hushed sidebars near the stairwell, forwarded emails with subject lines like "re-urgent," "need clarification on sourcing authority." By Thursday morning, the operations dashboard had a new tab labeled "Pending, Red Flagged." It listed 17 entries and counting. At 9:06 a.m., sharp, a single email landed. Subject line: updated terms and control notification. Effective immediately. It looked unremarkable. Plain. Almost boring. No greeting, no emoji, just plain Arial font and legal headers. But the email was flagged high priority red exclamation mark. It had been sent to Brendan Knox, the CEO, and CC'd to legal procurement and 2 external legal firms no one inside the company had ever heard of. Origin the supplier's general inbox. No hope this finds you well. No branding. No friendliness. Just revised governance terms, new executive structure account restrictions effective immediately. Knox opened it during a budget alignment meeting, already spiraling into finger-pointing and passive-aggressive spreadsheet wars. He read the first line. Stopped. The room, already stiff with tension, went utterly still. He didn't say a word. He just stared at the screen, blinking, while the air around the conference table grew tighter. And in that silence, every executive in the room suddenly understood. They hadn't just lost visibility. They'd lost control. He didn't even pretend to read the rest. Just turned pale, slowly, quietly, like someone watching their GPS calmly reroute them into oncoming traffic with no warning. Brendan stood up, left his laptop open, and walked straight through the glass doors of Conference Room Delta. Through reception, down the corridor. Like a man trying to outrun a sniper's dot, only he could see. Procurement exchanged looks. Did he just? Should someone check what it says? Someone finally reached for the laptop. The message wasn't long, 3 short paragraphs, tightly worded. No fluff. Every line felt like it had been tested for leaks in a corporate war room. Paragraph 1. Notification of updated contractual terms initiated in response to recent internal instability on the client side. Paragraph 2. Declaration of new executive control protocols, including retroactive authority reassignment for all open and future orders. Effective immediately. Paragraph 3. All communications must now route through the chair of the board of directors. Contact listed below, at the bottom digital signature. And beneath it, just one name. Procurement stared at the screen like it had grown fangs. Is that Tessa Monroe? Someone whispered. An intern from finance gasped audibly like a daytime soap villain had just risen from the grave and taken over the boardroom. Nobody spoke for a full 60 seconds. Then, Ricky, God bless his sweet, stunned little heart, said what everyone was thinking. Wait, she's what now? No one answered, but they all felt it. Whatever grip they thought they had, it had just been shattered like glass under a quiet heel. Mine? And I didn't even have to be in the building. The panic didn't start with yelling. It started with silence. The brittle kind that wraps itself around a company's neck and waits. Everyone pretended it was just a tight deadline. Procurement tried calling the supplier. Blocked. Legal drafted a formal request for clarification. No response. The CFO sent a list of urgent non-negotiables. It bounced. Returned with a note. Please refer all communication through updated channels as outlined in the governing term, Addendum 4C. Thank you. Term Addendum 4C didn't exist in their system. It did in mine. By noon, leadership looked like a broken sprinkler system, flailing in every direction, spraying confusion and buzzwords. Brendan canceled his afternoon golf meeting, spent the day pacing behind closed doors. At one point, he emerged just to snap at a junior analyst for formatting an internal memo in bullet points. The analyst cried in the stairwell. Meanwhile, at a quiet business-class hotel in Lincoln Park, I checked into a consultation suite under the name G. Whitaker. No reason for that name. I just liked how the G sounded vague, expensive. I smiled at the front desk, took the key card, and carried my laptop like it held nothing heavier than weekend plans. If you're still with me, don't forget to subscribe, because what comes next doesn't just change the company. It rewrites the rules. Inside the suite, a faux oak desk, blackout curtains, one fake ficus tree, and a complimentary mint, so old it had fused with its plastic wrap. On the desk sat a slim FedEx envelope, prearranged delivery. Inside, a packet of updated governance documents for the supplier, freshly signed, notarized, and certified. A yellow sticky note was clipped to the top. Clara's familiar cursive read, "Welcome to the top of the food chain." There was no gloating, no fist pump, no whispered checkmate. I didn't even look up from the envelope. I just opened my laptop, logged into the hotel Wi-Fi, and pulled up the new quarterly forecast. Because this wasn't revenge. It was repositioning. You don't torch bridges. You buy the toll booth. Then you set the price. Back at HQ, the CFO was red-faced and ranting about fiduciary negligence and who the hell vetted this woman. The head of compliance, voice thin, reminded the board that my financials had always been clean, quiet, but compliant. The purchase was executed through a Delaware-based holding company, no public link to my name. That holding company now controlled 52% of the supplier's equity, complete with full board voting rights, which meant I could approve or kill any term. Legal stared at his tablet like it had just served him divorce papers. "She has the terms," he said. "The board wants an emergency session," the CFO snapped. One board member asked flatly, "Did we know she had ownership?" Brendan blinked. "Of course not. She wasn't that important." That sentence hung in the air like a smoke alarm no one wanted to reach for. Meanwhile, I was drafting a proposal to a mid-sized firm in Austin whose vendor had gone belly up. I'd been watching them quietly for 9 months. Right now, they were desperate. I had options. I wrote the word in red marker on the suite's whiteboard. I underlined it twice and smiled. By 6:45 a.m., the next morning, 6 executives were seated in the conference room drinking burnt coffee and sweating through yesterday's button-downs. Brendan walked in last tie, crooked hair, pressed to one side like he'd slept in his car. No greeting, no updates, just a flat palm slap of his iPad on the table. "Why is our supplier ghosting us?" No one answered. Not because they didn't know, but because no one wanted to say my name out loud. Legal finally cleared his throat. "They haven't ghosted us. They've redirected." Redirected to who Brendan barked. Legal slid a folder forward. Inside, a printed email chain and a headshot. Black blazer, simple chain necklace, eyes forward like she could already see the future and had no interest in asking permission. "Tessa Monroe, chairman. She doesn't need to be qualified." Legal said flatly. "She is the board." Brendan paced. His polished shoes squeaked against the cheap laminate flooring like they were screaming with every step. "We need to take legal action. Remind them who the client is." He tried. To his credit, he really did. That afternoon, a formally worded notice went out through corporate counsel, alleging breach of implicit trust, accusing the supplier of covert maneuvering, demanding full service be resumed under the previous terms within 48 hours. 4 hours later, a response arrived. No apology, no justification. Just, "We are happy to continue under the updated governance structure. All terms are now subject to approval by Chairwoman Monroe. Please confirm understanding going forward." Below that, my signature. Digital, clean, absolute. And beneath that, in bold font, respect is the foundation of every successful partnership. Brendan lost it. He hurled his phone across the office. It hit the window with a crack and shattered. He shouted something about traitors and ungrateful spreadsheet trolls, then summoned the head of IT. "Pull every email she's ever sent. Every folder. I want the smoking gun." There wasn't one. because I hadn't needed to hide anything. Every move had been legal, documented, quiet. I hadn't played games. I'd rewritten the rules while he was still quoting buzzwords in all-hands meetings. By Friday, department heads stopped asking when things would return to normal. They started asking what I wanted. And that's when Brendan saw it. It wasn't just operations. It wasn't just logistics. It was the shift. The silence in the office wasn't confusion anymore. It was alignment. I'd left the building, but I hadn't left the room. I was the room. The request came late Friday night from someone I barely remembered. A procurement exec named Brent Ralston. Or was it Brad? Could have been Chad. One of those guys who spent most of Q3 forwarding attachments and avoiding eye contact. The subject line was dry meeting request. Discuss ongoing partnership. No mention of Brendan, no CC to legal. Just a direct message, typed after hours. A quiet signal that someone still believed a bridge could be rebuilt, even if the lumber had already burned. I didn't answer right away. Saturday morning, I sent my reply, 1 hour. Neutral ground. Hotel Montrose Lounge, 11:00 a.m., Sunday. I arrived 5 minutes early, not to make a point, but because lateness has never been part of my vocabulary. The Montrose wasn't flashy, but it was precise. Polished leather seating, cool stone floors, and soft jazz playing just obscure enough to feel expensive. The kind of place built for conversations where the decision had already been made. He was already there. Brent Ralston, sweating lightly in a suit with shoulder pads that hadn't been in style since the last recession. He stood when I walked in, as if greeting royalty or facing his own professional obituary. I gave a nod. No handshake. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I live 10 minutes away," I replied, sliding into the seat across from him. "Let's not waste the hour." He blinked, nodded quickly, and unfolded a legal pad already creased from thumb stress. So he began. "Obviously, there's been some confusion. We're hoping to reestablish the working relationship we had with your firm prior to." "We don't have a working relationship anymore," I said, not cruelly, just clearly. "You had terms. They expired. You had leadership. It failed. We start from zero." He swallowed, glancing toward the lounge staff. Lowered his voice like I might detonate a PR grenade over the almond croissants. "I understand. We're just hoping to, rebuild trust." I took a sip of coffee. Black, no sugar, eyes locked on his. "Trust," I repeated. "Let's talk about that." He sat a little straighter, maybe encouraged. "You trusted a dashboard over a decade of relationships," I said. "You trusted a man who called competence deadweight. And when the only person keeping your supply lines upright walked out, you trusted silence to mean submission. You didn't ask questions. You didn't reach out. You didn't clarify." I leaned back slightly. "You automated. You erased." He was very still now. No blinking, no excuse forming, just that quiet look people get when they realize water's rising and the floorboards are starting to float. I set my mug down carefully. "Business is possible," I said, "but we renegotiate. From a different position now." I reached into my bag and slid a single sheet of paper across the table. New terms, higher rates, payment upfront, no volume discounts, and a clause requiring quarterly, in-person meetings with me. He read it once. Then again. "These margins, they're significant." I gave a polite smile, the kind that didn't touch my eyes. So was calling me dead weight. A long pause. Then he said, "I'll take this to legal." "Please do," I said, "and finish my coffee." "You'll take it to the board," I corrected. "The CEO doesn't need to be involved." I stood, smoothed my blazer, lifted my mug. 1 hour. Exactly. Before leaving, I paused just briefly. "I'm not here to punish," I said, "but I'm also not here to be forgotten." Then I walked out, quiet as a scalpel. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for Monday morning, 8:00 a.m. sharp. No croissants, no name tags. Just 12 suits and one CEO who looked like he hadn't slept since Wednesday and might have tried to drown the problem in off-brand bourbon. They opened with numbers, delays, projected revenue loss, breach penalties, stacking like Jenga pieces in a wind tunnel. Then they moved to the procurement update. A dry-voiced VP read from a single page. Supplier is now under new executive direction. Contract terms revised. Across-the-board cost increase 18%. Net 30 terms removed. Exclusive manufacturing rights under review. Then came the final slide. Majority equity holder, T. Monroe Holdings. 52% silence. Thick and disbelieving. An older board member, retired CFO face, like crumpled parchment, squinted at the slide. Is that our Monroe? Brendan cleared his throat, tried to fake the loose, confident swagger he'd been workshopping since they handed him the corner office. Yes. Well, that was unexpected. Obviously, there were blind spots in our audit processes. She never disclosed, he added quickly. She wasn't required to snap another board member, a woman in a cobalt blue blazer who'd once called Brendan a PowerPoint pirate during Q2 dinner drinks. She didn't owe us disclosure. She continued. The vendor was third party. You cut her out before you asked what she owned. She left of her own accord, Brendan said, voice thin. She left with a coffee mug, the paper-skinned man murmured, and you handed her the factory. A low chorus followed soft curses, throat clears, someone muttering, Jesus Christ. Do we have any leverage? Someone asked. She owns the vendor, came the answer. Can we spin this as strategic realignment? You want to spin losing our exclusive supplier as strategy, the cobalt blazer shot back. Brendan raised both hands. Look, this is salvageable. We just need to renegotiate. You tried, she said flatly. She sent you a new rate sheet and a chair with your name scratched off. Silence fell again, heavier this time, like a door swinging shut. Then the final blow, soft, almost sympathetic. I think someone said we should consider a mutual resignation. Brendan's jaw locked. No protest, no rebuttal. Just the slow slack of someone realizing this chapter of his career would end with a footnote featuring the woman he'd once called Deadweight. By 3:00 p.m., the press release had been drafted. By 5:07 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Miss Monroe, came a voice like boiled oatmeal wearing a tie. The board wanted to reach out, explore the possibility of your return. In some capacity. We believe your leadership would be, pass, I said, and ended the call. No anger, no gloating, just closure. I flipped the phone face down, leaned into my couch cushions, and let a small private breath slip through my smile. They'd finally seen me. Too bad they'd gone blind when it would have made a difference. 3 weeks later, their product launch limped into the world, if you could even call it a launch. The press release had typos. The demo video froze twice. And their flagship innovation wasn't compatible with half the infrastructure they'd promised it would replace. Their new CEO, a finance guy named Cal Hartley, with the stage presence of cold toast, stood in front of a sad vinyl backdrop and read from a teleprompter like he was still learning phonics. They called it adaptive innovation. I called it duct tape in a tuxedo. I watched it on mute from the back corner of a quiet cafe in Lincoln Park. Rain tapped lightly on the window. Soft jazz hummed overhead, and in my hand, that same chipped mug. The one that used to sit on my desk. The steam curled upward, thin as a whisper, like the smoke from a just-fired bullet. Across from me, no one. No camera crew, no assistants. Just a woman drinking her coffee, watching an empire she once powered try to run on fumes. My phone buzzed again. One new email from Ava Marino, my assistant, subject FYI. Final contract signed, body competitor deal locked. Supplier retains exclusivity rights. Terms non-negotiable. They agreed no edits. You were right about their pain point. Congrats, boss. I took a sip. Dark roast. Unsweetened. Clean. Like me. Outside, the street kept moving. Buses, blinking crosswalks, people rushing toward things they'd later forget. The world kept turning, just no longer under the illusion that I needed permission to steer. I glanced at my reflection in the glass, still composed. Not smiling exactly, but almost. The kind of look you wear when the weight that used to crush you now rests quietly in your hands. No speeches, no revenge monologue, no dramatic piano cue, just a woman, a contract, a chipped mug, and the kind of power no one gives you, the kind you take. If you've made it this far, I want to hear from you. Not as a headline, not as a headline, not as a case study, as a human being who finally stopped apologizing for taking up space. Tell me what part of this story hit closest to home for you. What moment reminded you of a time you were overlooked, underestimated, or called something you never deserved to be? Leave a comment. Share it. Not for me, for you. Because when we name what broke us, we start to reclaim the power it tried to take. And if you're sitting in a job, a relationship, or a room where your voice has been muted, listen carefully. You don't need anyone's permission to reclaim your place. You don't have to play loud to be strong. Quiet power still moves the world. Subscribe if you haven't. Not just to follow my story, but to join a community of people rewriting their own. Because this isn't just about business or revenge. It's about value. And sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is refuse to vanish. You're not deadweight either. You're the engine. Start acting like it.